Join us for an interview with Hamzat Balogun, a young immigrant entrepreneur hailing from Nigeria whose study of electrical engineering eventually led to the creation of Sovrygn watches, where he designs luxurious wristwear that's now sold in 15 countries. Let's dive in. Time is ticking.
I know at different points in time when I was in class, like in my engineering classes, there were times where I would sit and just, kind of like fantasize about my future, and someone would ask me if I wasn't doing engineering, what would I be doing now? And usually my first response is selling watches or selling jewelry. And I would always have like rough sketches of like watches in my notepads and stuff when I was in class.
Okay, let's get into this. According to research, demand for high-end watches skyrocketed during the pandemic, and as a result, sales of those watches now exceeds $18 billion, and according to McKinsey, may top $30 billion by 2025. With a market this large, it's no surprise upstarts are challenging a landscape dominated by Omega, Rolex, and Cartier. And that brings us to today's guest. Hamzat Balogun arrived in Canada in August of 2011 from Nigeria, having traveled here to attend Carleton University. Although he set out to take a degree in mechanical engineering, which he accomplished, his heart lay elsewhere. During his engineering classes, Hamzat would fantasize about his future. When asked by peers what he'd be doing aside from engineering, he was clear early on that he wanted to design and sell jewelry and watches. Hamzat's interest in watches stems from his childhood, when his parents would often travel and bring him back gifts. His realization of their potential came when he overheard a conversation between his father and a friend in which they discussed the idea that watches were more than just accessories and were instead signifiers of status and opportunities for creating wealth. Having grown up with parents who had experienced in entrepreneurship, Hamzat's first taste of business began during his transition from junior high to senior high school, where he would be at home for 3 months. Hamzat's father would hire him to run the family business, allowing him to gain insight into running and sustaining his own company, which would come in handy years later after he graduated. Shortly after graduating from Carleton University, Hamzat started his own online store, selling watches and accessories through third-party companies. Fed up with inventory and design constraints, Hamzat chose instead to go it alone, eventually launching his own direct-to-consumer brand, Sovrygn Watches. Today, Hamzat spends his time during the day working in software development and works on Sovrygn Watches as a side hustle, overseeing all of the design, manufacturing, and marketing to support customer sales in over 15 different countries. In this interview, Hamzat will share his early entrepreneurial experience, how he transitioned from studying engineering at Carleton into starting his own business, where his love of watches stemmed from, and much more. We hope you enjoy it. Let's dive into the interview. Hey there, Hamzat. It is such a pleasure for me to welcome you to do this interview because I'm so excited to speak to you again. You are, to me, a bright face of entrepreneurship, given your background. You're an immigrant. You came to Canada to study engineering, but chose to get into the very cool business of designing and marketing watches direct to consumer. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you and welcome to this episode.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for the consideration for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure. So let's start at the beginning. So you own this amazing watch brand called Sovrygn Watches. But before we get there, why don't you give people a bit of background in terms of what brought you to be in Canada right now and doing what you're doing?
So I originally moved to Canada in 2011, August of 2011. I remember it was shortly before my, 19th birthday. And when I moved here, I initially moved here for school. So I had to do grade 11 and 12 in Hamilton, and then ended up moving to Carleton for engineering. As fate would have it, I was supposed to do mechanical engineering or aerospace, but I ended up in electrical because I had a scholarship there and I didn't want to let go of the scholarship because that was almost like a dream I had before even moving here. And after Carleton, or even before I left Carleton, a long time before that, I had always liked watches and, just collecting watches. There was something about them that's just fascinated me the entire time. So I'd always drawn closer. So if I had seen someone wearing a nice watch, I would always like want to know what type of watch it is and just get some more information about it. And shortly after I was done at Carleton, I had a business where I had an online store. So I was selling watches and accessories for third-party brands. But because of the constraints I was facing using, because of like the inventories and all these things, and also designs as well, I had an idea, or an epiphany, I should say, that I should start my own brand. And I ended up closing the online store I had, and then started working on my own brand and just sourcing out manufacturers and working on designs. But that's the short of it.
Now, the thing that amazed me when I first met you was, I'd heard that here's a guy, he's got his own watch brands. And my natural, thought was, you're selling somebody else's watch brands. But as you just said, you were started out doing that, but you said, no, I'm going to get into designing my own watches and having them manufactured. And so when I looked at these are amazingly sophisticated, very beautiful pieces. So I'm curious, first of all, you studied engineering. So what made you take the leap into doing something that is largely unrelated to engineering? What was the trip and the journey to becoming an entrepreneur?
I know at different points in time when I was in class, like in my engineering classes, there were times where I would sit and just, kind of like fantasize about my future. And someone would ask me if I wasn't doing engineering, what would I be doing now? And usually my first response is selling watches or selling jewelry. And I would always have like rough sketches of like watches in my notepads and stuff when I was in class. And also, part of it was influence from my background growing up, because usually when my parents travel or they go on trips and they come back, they usually bring like watches and different things like that. And I remember going with my dad to his place of work once, and I could see him and his colleague like discussing about like the watches they were wearing. And there was something about that allowed me to recognize that this is something more than just an accessory they're wearing. It signifies something to them in that place of work. It's almost like, I don't want to say badge of honor, but there's something about you that separates the kind of watch you're wearing, that separates you from the next person besides you. And all those things came together, and part of my fascination with watches came from there as well. And I would say that's where most of it came from, and why I really wanted to start a watch brand.
So what was the... how much carryover is there between studying electrical engineering and doing what you're doing now?
Practically none. Practically none. If I had done mechanical engineering, where I would have dealt more with gears and like mechanics of machines, that would have been perfect. But I believe everything happened for a reason, and yeah.
So what was the, you're originally from Nigeria. What kind of environment did you grow up with in Nigeria? What did your parents do, for instance?
So my dad was an accountant. My mom had a business. And I know usually my dad always had like a side business. It's either real estate or something like farming. And I remember in between, so when I was moving from junior high to senior high school, I had to be at home for about 3 months. And in that 3-month period, my dad had a business he was running, so he put me in charge of that. So it was probably maybe around, I would say 15 or 16 at the time. And because I had to be at home that entire period, that kind of kept me busy and allowed me know how to run a business and how to maintain all these different things. So part of that too allowed me to see the independence in having a business and what that additional cash flow can do for you as a person. And, the time as well for my mom, I know she had a business and she could decide and wake up today, oh, I don't want to do anything today. And, she'll stay at home and take that day as a rest day. So I'll say the best of both worlds. What I think Robert Kiyosaki pretty much called the rich dad and the poor dad in like both of my parents. And I was able to take that and say, okay, where can I find like the points of convergence where I can make this work for me in the best way?
Interesting. So I didn't realize that you had actually grown up in a quite entrepreneurial family. You know, I said to you the first time we spoke that I've done some work in Nigeria, and I was absolutely blown away by the number of entrepreneurs that were over there. I mean, these are people that are some of the hardest working I've ever seen. It was quite amazing. The energy, the dynamism of Nigeria was quite remarkable. Yeah, I was very impressed. So so you come by entrepreneurship honestly, for sure. So when you decided to transition from simply selling products to designing and selling products, how did you figure that part out? Because it's not easy designing a watch. Like, how did you develop the knowledge, and what was the route that you followed to getting your first products made?
So I think one of the things that helped me so far was, even while I was in school for engineering, I didn't just stick to that. I always was doing personal development, so like projects on the side or self-development as well. And I believe one of the things that really helped me see was that if I set my mind to something and do it over and over and over again, I would eventually get better at it. And I would also say consistency as well. So because I had spent all this time from before I left Nigeria up until the time I came here, and even when I go here as well, which is probably more than 10 years, I had spent the majority of that time collecting a bunch of different watches and just seeing different things. And I think just because I had that experience with those different watches and those different types of watches, that allowed me to see that, okay, there are certain things that actually sell in a watch, and there are certain things that don't do as well when you get a watch. Sometimes you might have a watch that looks or you think is very good, but to someone else it's like a complete no-no. So I think that experience so far definitely helped a lot. And then I had this little thing where I was kind of like a watch concierge for my friends as well, where if they needed a watch, they would come to me, tell me their budget, and then I'll help them like source different watches or give them options. So that definitely helped a lot. Going from selling to designing. So my first design, I had to work with the manufacturers and tell them, okay, this is what I'm trying to accomplish based off of what I had seen from my concierge business. And I was able to take some of the elements I'd seen in the watches that I knew did very well and then kind of impute that into the first collection I had. And after that, I realized I had that element of design in me because now I do software development. So you're writing code and you're seeing more like a picture. So that definitely helped with my imagination a lot. And I was able to start thinking and spending more time just drawing, and from rough sketches over and over and different iterations, you eventually get to the one where you feel like, okay, I think this is the one. And I would say there is no one way to exactly tell like that's the one, but I feel like when you do things like that, it's almost like an artist recording a song. When you hear it sound a certain type of way, you'll be able to tell like, okay, I feel like I've hit the mark here. And I believe it's the same thing with watches, where when you get to a certain design iteration, you can tell like, okay, I don't think I need to add or remove anything from this, and this should be the final. Yeah.
Right. So it is I mean, I love how you've translated kind of this technical expertise and this passion, as well as the family background, into this amazing business. So when you said that you were collecting all these watches, were you literally taking them apart and looking at the mechanics of them, or is that what you were focused on?
For the most part, it was just buying and selling. I had a few of them that were skeleton watches, and those I was able to see through like the mechanics because it was all glass. So it's pretty much like the one I'm wearing now, where if you look through the front or the back, you can actually see everything that's going on inside the watch. So I had a few of those and I was able to see it. But at that point, I wasn't focused too much on understanding. It was more of an aesthetic thing for me as opposed to more of understanding the mechanics. Yeah.
Right. Amazing. So, I've worked quite a bit in and around manufacturers, but even with that background, I wouldn't have a clue how to find someone who can make a watch. Like, so how did you try out? Where did you begin and how did you find them?
That's a very good question. So I believe what I did was I started looking at different. So if you go on Alibaba, for example, there are people who sell different things. So say, for example, if I wanted to make, okay, so I'll use the watch box as an example. So for something like this, I can go on Alibaba and say, okay, I know the name of this thing. It's called the watch roll. And I can say, okay, I'm looking for a watch roll. And when you type that in, it'll pretty much show you different manufacturers who specialize in that particular thing. And at that point, you can start chatting with them and see which one of them uh, is able to accomplish what you're trying to do. So in my case, one of the biggest things was starting out as a small business. For watches, you need a very large minimum order quantity, sometimes 300, 500.
Right.
And that's a large chunk of money in most cases.
Sure.
So what I did was try to find a manufacturer that was able to accept like a smaller order amount for me just starting. And that way, as I continue to grow the business, then I can build up myself to a point where I can meet that minimum order quantity. But that was the very big part of it, was making sure the supplier was able to meet that my minimum requirement as opposed to theirs.
So you decide on your first design, you decide you're going to then go and find a manufacturer to make it. So out of curiosity, what was your minimum first order on that first watch you designed?
So initially what they had told me was 300 pieces.
Wow. And did you have to order 300 pieces?
Thankfully, no, because that would have cost at least not of $100,000, and I definitely didn't have that at the time, considering I was funding the business like out of my own pocket. So thankfully, I didn't have to do that. I believe that I ordered somewhere close to 100 pieces at the time, and that's what I started with. And yes.
And so you get your first watch back. It's your baby. 100 of these watches show up. And now you've got to hope that the world loves this watch design as much as you do. So how did you take the watch to market? What was the process?
So for me, thankfully, when I was in school, I remember I was in one of my classes. It was called CCDP, and there was this ad that popped up for on. I think it was on Google, but it was for a Kickstarter campaign. So what I did at the time was I looked on it and I immediately sent the people who had the campaign that, I like this idea of starting your own watch brand. And, I would like to be a part of it. But obviously that was just me being naive at the time. And, I don't even think I heard back from them. But from that time, the concept of Kickstarter and how it worked always stuck with me. So I went back to the platform and just had a look. And when it was time for me to launch my own watch brand, so I started doing more research and looking at previous watch campaigns that were on Kickstarter. And then I eventually launched mine, had a few backers from there, and that was able to help me jumpstart the business.
Fantastic. Amazing. Wow. And so before you launch on Kickstarter, but after you've ordered 100 watches, you must talk to your parents. What do your parents say to you about this?
So I've always wanted to start a business even when I was in school. I remember I was going to do this clothing line thing while I was in school, and I talked to my parents about it, and they were like, yeah, I think you should be done school first before doing that. And now I could see the reasons why, because it's time consuming and you probably not have too much time to do much else. But I spoke to them about it, and I think now they understood that, okay, you're done with school and, this is the time for you to do all the things you want to do with your life. And, and they were quite happy about it, just seeing that I was able to take an idea from scratch and take it to that stage where it's like, okay, customers can buy. And they were pretty happy with it. I know almost every time I talk to my dad, I talked to him this past weekend and he asked me about it. And I told him I was going to do something on Saturday. On Sunday, he called me and he was like, yeah, how did you go about this? And how did it turn out? So I think they've been very, very, very supportive so far. And also because they like watches as well, it's almost impossible at this point to be like, no, I don't think that's a good idea.
Amazing. Amazing. So did you, through the process of getting your first product out there, did you have any sleepless nights?
Lots of it. Lots of it. So one of the things is the suppliers are 12 hours ahead of my time. So usually when everyone is supposed to be sleeping, that's usually when I'm awake trying to like talk to them. But what I try to do is make sure if there are things I need to get sorted before that time at night, I always have like talking points. So I'll make sure I have all those things listed and just let them know, look, this is the time where I'm supposed to be sleeping. So I'd like to make this quick and straight to the point and pretty much talk to them about it. Some of them are usually open on the weekend. So if I'm not able to get some of the stuff sorted out during the weekday, then just shift it to the weekend and get it sorted.
Right. I know that is it's a difficult time zone to work with from North America, isn't it? Yeah. So how many designs now that have been designed by you, how many have you now released?
So 1, 2, 3. So 3 so far. I have one that's supposed to be released next year. That's still in the development stage. But yeah, so far 3.
And so your watch is Sovrygn. Sovrygn is the watch brand. It's entirely direct to consumer. Is that right?
Yeah, so I have a website, sovrygn.com or sovrygn.watches.com, and it's a fully functioning website because I do web dev as my day job. So that allows me to like see all the things I need to fix on the website and make all the changes that are necessary and all that. So on my website, if someone goes there now, they'll be able to order, select their shipping and all the good stuff they would normally do on any other website. And in a very short period of time, they would have their watch available to them.
So what you mentioned that you have a day job and you're running this business separately. Now, I think you mentioned to me that you've now sold Sovrygn into 15 different countries. Is that right? Which is, it is so amazing. I mean, this kind of thing makes my heart sing because the reality is like, one, I fundamentally believe in the transformative potential of business. And you're a prime example. The fact that you're sitting here in Ottawa designing a watch and people from 15 different countries have found you and bought your product. I mean, it's amazing. So what is it going to take for you to leave your day job and make this your full-time job? I mean, is that even your desire?
From what I've been seeing recently, I would say things are getting more serious these days, especially with this new collection I'm launching. I would say the success of the launch of the current collection, because that would mean when that's successful, that would mean I have created a larger customer base, 1, and 2, now there are more people that are aware of the brand. And that would also mean that I have gotten to a point where I can now start making those large minimum order quantity orders. And one of the very big things I know that's usually a struggle for small businesses that are usually just starting out is cash flow. And I believe that's where Kickstarter comes in for me. So my plan is to make sure that I have a successful Kickstarter campaign next year. And when that happens, I can now start having those large minimum order quantity orders. And when I have that, that would give me more than enough opportunity to decide that, yeah, it's time to put this job down, because that only means one thing. What that translates to is more time that I have to spend on the business and do all the things that need to be taken care of. And when I put it into perspective, sometimes from marketing to customer service to social media, all the different facets of the business, doing it alone is definitely not going to be sustainable as the business grows. So then I would have to start either working with more people or trying to automate more of those processes.
Well, listen, it is high time that Nigeria took on Switzerland for dominance of the watch industry. And I'm so happy that, Hamzat, you're going to be leading that charge. So very grateful that you chose Canada and Carleton University. And I just wish you the greatest success. I love you. I love your story, man. And best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sticking to the end of our interview with Hamzat Balogun, founder of Sovrygn Watches. I love talking to Hamzat about his translation of study into a business built on passion. Hamzat is further proof that successful entrepreneurship is the ultimate meritocracy, and that with enough grit, determination, and hope, success can be achievable by anyone, no matter their background. And as always, I want to give a big shout out to my amazing sponsor, the Innovation Hub at Carleton University, dedicated to helping create leaders and new business ventures. Find out more at www.carleton.ca/innovationhub. And please remember to hit like and subscribe for more great stories of inspired entrepreneurs. See you next time.